Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Taylor, and in today's video, we're gonna go ahead and do a quick fuel filter change on my 6.4 Powerstroke. So let's go ahead and get started. So I figured I'd start off by showing you guys everything you should need to go ahead and change these filters. Now I highly recommend just buying the Ford Motorcraft filters. I actually have Wix filters in the truck right now, and although they do make high quality oil filters and fuel filters, they just weren't quite right, and I'll show you the difference between these when we get it all apart, but I swear by all the Ford stuff when it comes to my filters. Next, you're gonna need a 36mm socket. This is for removing the filter housing caps on both of these fuel filters. And this is actually the same socket that you'll use for doing an oil change and removing the filter cap on that as well. So if you don't have one of these yet, I'd highly recommend just going and buying one of those. You got your socket wrench for that socket, and along with a couple of different sizes of extensions, because when you're underneath the truck, the lower filter housing is a little difficult to get to, so I'll show you that later. And rubber gloves, because I hate touching diesel fuel. It's almost impossible to get off of your hands. And just some regular paper towels. I am going to be using this water bottle here to drain the water fuel separator under the truck, just so we don't make a mess. So now let's go outside and look at the truck. All right guys, this is my truck. It's a 2008 Ford F450 with the 6.4 in it, and I'll show you the two locations that we're going to be working on today. The first of which is under the hood, if I can get this thing open. And the housing is right here for that fuel filter, and then the other filter is actually on the frame rail on the driver's side. So we'll climb under there in a minute and I'll show you how that all lays in there. All right guys, here is the lower filter housing, and all we're going to do to start is flick this valve open right here. You can see where my thumb is. We're going to flip that open, and fuel is going to start draining out of here. So you can see diesel starting to drain into there. So this may take a little while. I'm going to keep draining this, and then we'll catch up when I'm ready to take that cap off. I'm finished draining out of there, and you can see this socket setup that I have. I've got the 36mm on the cap, and the sockets are actually coming back underneath the cross member here so that I can actually use the socket wrench way over here. So now we're going to go ahead and crack this thing loose. Well, as it turns out, I didn't drain that lower housing enough, and I just took a shower in diesel, so the gloves are gone. But anyways, let's have a look at these filters. Now, this is the Wix filter that I took out, and you can see it was definitely due. But there's one main difference here that I thought I would point out, and that is this little extension at the end. Actually, let me get this out of the package real quick. Here's that Ford Motorcraft filter. As you can see, there's this extension at the end with an O-ring around it. The Wix filter, which was for this particular truck sold by Wix, did not have that extension. Anyways, you can see this has like a sheathing around it, kind of keep even bigger particles out. So I think you can tell the difference in quality between the Ford and the Wix filters. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this thing in now. You will also get a new O-ring to put on your filter housing cap. Goes in right around the top. So I'm going to switch that out real quick and then reinstall this. You can see that the filter clips into the housing just like it would the oil filter up top. So now we're going to go ahead down to the frame rail and reinstall this. Alright guys, we're done with the more difficult of the two filters. Now we're going to go ahead and remove this upper filter here in the engine bay. Alright, we're just going to dump this thing out into my little oil container here, throw on a new O-ring, and throw the new filter in there. Alright guys, you can see I got this cleaned up real well. Got the new O-ring on there. I forgot to mention before, when you're putting the O-rings on, put a light little coat of excess diesel around it just so it slides into the housings easier. Got the new filter here, nice and clean. I was definitely due for a filter change, that is for sure. So yeah, let's go get this thing installed. Now up here, sorry, let me climb up. You can see I got the fuel ball super clean, dried it out, and blew it out with a little compressed air just to make sure there's no dust particles in there. So this just simply slides right over that tube, like so. Push it down a little bit and just crank it down. And that's it. All right, guys, we got both filters installed. The caps are tight. We've got new O-rings, and that drain valve is shut on that lower filter housing. So now what we're gonna do is go ahead and purge air out of the system. Basically, all we need to do is turn the key forwards. So down here, we're basically just gonna turn the key as if you're going to start the truck, but don't actually turn it to where you're cranking. We're gonna do this probably 6 to 10 times just to make sure we've got all the air out of the system. You probably can't hear it on the video, but I do hear the pump priming right now. So I'm gonna do this a handful of times and then I'll catch up with you when the truck's running again. All right, there we go. So it's just as easy as that to purge that air out of the system. Just make sure you take your time and you don't rush it. Like I said, cycle that key between 6 and 10 times. Everywhere I've read, that seems to be the most ideal amount of time to purge the system for. So let's just go out and check for leaks real fast, but I'd say we're looking pretty good. I don't see anything leaking down other than what I already spilled. And we're looking good here. This is all totally dry. All right, guys, well, that's gonna do it for your 6.4 Powerstroke fuel filter change. It definitely is a little bit of a dirty job just because it's so tight under there on that driver's side frame rail. It's just inevitable to get hit with some kind of fuel. So I did ruin a sweatshirt and a shirt today, but it's no big deal. Anyway, so I'm really happy to get my filters changed, and it took me all of about 45 minutes. So you can definitely do this yourself at home. It's not that bad. Just keep in mind that you might get a little dirty doing it. One thing I did want to touch on before we finish out the video is the interval of replacement for these filters. When I bought this truck, I did some research online just trying to figure out an answer for myself, and there were some guys in the forums saying that you should change these filters every 5,000 miles or every oil change, which seemed pretty excessive to me. And ultimately, I've taken mine to about 20,000 miles each time. I replaced both filters at once, and that's been okay for me. They did get a little dirty this time because I went over 20. But another thing to think about and consider is where you're buying your fuel. I get 90% of the fuel for my truck at a brand new Maverick gas station. It's right down the street from my house. They've got fresh tanks in the ground, and there's a semi truck there filling up diesel every week. So I figure my odds of getting good high quality fuel every time I fill up are pretty high. If you live somewhere where you're just filling up in older gas stations, or you're always on the road filling up at a different station, I would probably consider changing your filters a little more frequently to be on the safe side. Now, the reason I say that is because these trucks have an extremely temperamental fuel system. If they get any contamination in them whatsoever, it can wipe out the injection pump along with a lot of the injectors. And by contamination, I mean dirt, just any type of crap in the fuel, but water is the biggest problem, because if any little corrosion starts to build up in that system, it'll essentially just rip shrapnel through the whole thing and destroy it. And I have heard of that happening in a lot of other people's trucks. So just something to keep in mind on your own pickup. So just one last look at the filters we took out. These had just a little over 20,000 miles on them. A little filthier down here, but you can see some of the original yellow material from wicks. And then this lower one was pretty much dirty all the way through. So in the future, I'm definitely not buying Wix filters, only Motorcraft. All right, guys, that is going to do it for today's video. I really hope that you enjoyed it or found it helpful. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up for me and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more automotive content like this. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next video.